My experience with this game was quite complex. The first full playthrough was on and off in between 3 months, and yet Ace and I still managed to complete the game. Somehow. Looking back on the whole experience, the game definitely feels more difficult with co-op due to more elements on the screen and the fights just being longer. However, I think the game is very fair when it comes to both balancing solo and cooperative play. In co-op, you can technically resurrect each other indefinitely, which allows for both partners to afford more mistakes, whereas in solo, the fights are much shorter and encourage you to constantly play aggressive to push bosses into the next phase. These are just observations I made after finishing my co-op run with Ace and playing the game solo in my own time. Some bosses were especially tricky when it came to attacks that tracked the player character, as the mechanics would rotate which player it marked per attack chain. Biggest contender of this was the mermaid, as her ghost would switch tracking for every group and her yellow dolphin would also switch as well. Most bosses had similar types of behavior, of course. I'm just calling out the mermaid because that boss gave me the most trouble. And I don't like you. Bosses aside, Cuphead had an exceptional degree of personal style to its package. The art style, animations, character design, music, and UI are all crafted with a retro feel of old Western cartoons and animations. It all comes together quite nicely, as the presentation and performance are very fluid. Moving Cuphead or Mugman is incredibly responsive, and the sound effects and animations are not just for cool design, but can also be used as cues for anticipating attacks. Run and gun levels are all uniquely challenging, with different mechanics to progress them. I wish there were more of them, since they're a good change of pace from bosses, but the DLC does add the King of Games champions, which were a welcome substitute that had its own unique challenges. The story and progression is quite simple, with you going around the islands collecting the soul debt of the bosses. I thought it was pretty dark initially, since we're just killing other characters to save your own soul, but it turns out that everyone is actually alive, and as seen in the DLC ending. I didn't personally find many of the charms or shots that useful, as only a handful I became comfortable using. It definitely is a personal preference in which setup you use, as the spread shot, which you get from the beginning of the game, was pretty much my go-to for all bosses. Lastly, I just want to acknowledge the large amount of post-game content that there is, which challenges the skills that you've trained up to the completion of your first run. There is expert mode, which makes the boss actions feel a lot faster, alongside new attacks and higher health thresholds. Pacifist ratings for run and guns, which require some clever use of charms and text to achieve, and the most difficult achievement of developing the Divine Relic. Despite all this quality content in Cuphead, it took me still less than 30 hours to complete everything, including perfect ratings and challenges. Honestly, I'm quite surprised at how little that is, but I can say that each of those hours was thoroughly engaging and rage-inducing. So now I await the sequel alongside my many other titles.